Hi, it's Noah, or Kernellinux in the chat room. Some of you may recognize me from some of the interviews I've done for Jupiter Broadcasting, and this is My Runs Linux. My dad has devoted his life to making healthy food that actually tastes good. The project started when a local non-profit group contacted him asking him to be part of a local FM radio station they wanted to launch. After coming on board with them, they began to plan out the technical details of putting the radio station on the air. My dad suggested to the group that Altispeed, my company, might be able to help. After we got involved, we sat down and got a general idea of what they wanted to accomplish. The goal was to put a radio station on the air, be able to take remote broadcasts, have multiple people control or edit the station's content. All of this had to be reliable and, of course, had to stay within the budget. We're here in the Logos Radio Studio, and I'm just going to go through some of the equipment that's used. Obviously, content starts with a talent. So we have microphones that are mounted up here for the host to use, as well as a table with two microphones that we use for interviews, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Those microphones then go to this audio mixer right behind me. From that audio mixer over to the PreSonus audio interface, and then from that audio interface into the production machine. Now, from the production machine, we can either record audio or we can send it out over the air. Many people in the group were already using Linux, and they were on Ubuntu, so naturally we went with Ubuntu for the majority of the equipment here. You're welcome, Popey. The production machine is running Ubuntu 14.04 LTS. The auxiliary laptop is also running 14.04 LTS. Now we use this for bringing audio into the studio. So for example, sound clips or Skype or Mumble. We actually found that Mumble actually gave us a better audio quality than Skype did, at least for music. For voice, Skype seems to be a little bit better. For some of the concerts that we've put out, Mumble seems to work a little bit better, and so we have both. Many of the technologies, techniques, ideas, they all come from Jupiter Broadcasting, because that's my primary source of entertainment content, and so naturally I sought to replicate a lot of the stuff that I saw work very well. Okay, over here is our interview table, and so essentially it's just a simple round table with two microphones. Now the microphone is actually being used for another project right now, and the other chair is performing a very important function, which I'll get to in just a couple minutes. Okay, this is the part that probably most of you are interested in. We're here inside of the server room, and this is where the magic happens. The first server here is our IceCast server, and what IceCast does, if you're not familiar with it, is it allows you to send an audio stream to it, and then it rebroadcasts that back down to the receiving clients. So the station is using a piece of software called Dark Ice, and Dark Ice sends a stream up to the IceCast server, and then that goes back down to the receiving clients. The IceCast server is running CentOS 6.5 x64, and the reason for that is I am a Red Hat system administrator, and so I'm most comfortable in CentOS. So like it or love it, that's what I decided to go with. Below it is the Airtime server, also running on CentOS 6.5 64-bit. And what Airtime does is it gives you a web interface and allows the radio group to schedule the content they want to play when they're not live and on the air. I said that the IceCast server sent down to receiving clients. Now I'm going to show you what those receiving clients look like. One of them, obviously, is what goes over the FM broadcast. So let's go take a look at what that looks like. Okay, you remember a couple of minutes ago when I said that that chair was performing an important function? It's holding up the transmission rack. Now this rack's eventually going to get mounted in the wall, but right now we're having some RFI issues, and so we're not sure if the transmitter is going to stay in this room. We need to wait until the Helix cable actually gets installed, because if you know anything about radio broadcasting, you'll know that Helix has a lot better shielding and suffers from leakage less than the LMR 400 that's currently running the station. The box on top that actually receives the IceCast stream, it's using plain old VLC, and it's running a GUI, which wouldn't be my preference. This is a temporary solution until a 1U computer can actually get installed. This is a Dell 15Z running Ubuntu 12.04 64-bit. Now that stream comes out just through the audio jack and goes into the rack mixer. Again, in a perfect world, we would never be using the audio card built into a computer. It's just a temporary solution until the permanent one gets here. That rack level mixer then sends to the DAS system. The DAS system is what interrupts the radio broadcast to give you severe weather alerts. Now, incidentally enough, when I say that the entire radio station runs Linux, I don't just mean the parts that I had a hand in. This DAS encoder actually has an embedded version of Linux, and it's very Linuxy. I can actually SSH in and change config files to make changes to it. The last piece, of course, is the actual transmitter. Now, this is the part that takes the audio stream and modulates it into an FM transmission for people to listen on their car radios and however else you listen to FM radio. It's made by BW Broadcasting. It's a TX300 version 2. This also is running embedded Linux, although I found there was a Telnet port, but I wasn't able to actually authenticate into the box. I can only get to it through the web UI. But all of this is feeding off of the IceCast server, or it's pulling down the stream from the IceCast server. We're here back in my office, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how we do remote broadcasting. Now, I had mentioned earlier that we use a piece of software called DarkIce, and what DarkIce is doing for us is it allows us to take an audio source that's coming into the computer and send it out over the IceCast stream. You can use the built-in audio interface of your laptop, or you can purchase an external USB audio capture device. I prefer the latter. I prefer the latter dramatically because not only does it drastically reduce the amount of interference incurred during the audio capture process, but it also drastically improves the quality. Taking around a traditional audio interface like the USB one we use in the studio isn't always practical. They're big and they're bulky, and I prefer to keep all the equipment that I use to a single bag. For that, I turn to the Icicle. Now, the Icicle is made by Chris's favorite audio company in the entire world, the people that brought you the Blue Snowball. On one side, you have an XLR phantom-powered jack that takes the input of the microphone. On the other side, we have a mini USB connector that I can use for connecting it to my laptop. And then in the middle, we have an attenuator in case the microphone is a little too soft or a little too loud. I love this device. I take it with me everywhere I go. If I travel, it's in my suitcase, and if I'm in town, it's in my computer bag. For my actual microphone, I prefer a broadcasting headset. Now, a broadcasting headset differs from a communication headset or a gaming headset in a couple different ways. First is the quality of the microphone. Now, the dynamic mic attached to this Audio-Technica broadcasting headset is of supreme quality. It captures my voice very accurately and at the same time discards background noise. The other thing that makes a broadcasting headset differ is the connectors used. It uses a XLR connector for the microphone and a 1/4-inch stereo jack for the headphones. Now, this is fantastic because most pro audio equipment uses one of those two connectors. Connecting it to the computer is simple. I just simply plug the XLR into the Blue Icicle and then with a USB cable attach that to my laptop. For the headphone jack, I actually use a $4 adapter I got off of Amazon that plugs right into the headphone jack of my laptop. Now, I know what you're thinking. A couple minutes ago, I just told you that the audio interface built into the computer is of poor quality and you shouldn't use it. And that's true. It is poor quality. However, for the purposes of the headphones, I don't really care about quality. All I care about is that I'm not over-modulating the microphone and that I'm speaking directly into it. Now, all of the software I've showed you and all of the hardware I've showed you is natively compatible with Linux. One of the things that really irks me is when I see a project that claims to be based in Linux, and then when you look into it a little deeper, you find out that they're using Wine here, or NDIS wrapper there, or a hack together script this. It's not that I don't appreciate these projects. I'm glad we have things like Wine, so I, as a Linux user who wants to live 100% in Linux, can do so, even if the software developers aren't willing to write software for my preferred operating system. But I think it's okay to toot the horn a little bit more for projects like ours that specifically are geared to use Linux. Everything I've showed you is either available in the repos or will run natively on Linux. All the hardware I showed you requires no tinkering. It will natively work out of the box with your Linux distribution, assuming it's modern. I have 1404 running on my work desktop. I have Arch running on my work laptop. I have Ubuntu 1404 running in the studio. I use Fedora personally on my personal laptop and my home computer. All of this stuff works natively, both hardware and software, right out of the box. The only exception to my all open source and no proprietary thing is Alan hosts the streaming service for us that goes onto the website, and he can't take an OGG stream, so we are sending him an MP3 stream. It's still coming from IceCast, but it is technically proprietary. That's my Runs Linux for this week, and I hope you enjoyed it.